Welcome to the Discover podcast, where we view faith as a discovery journey with Jesus to help you become the person God created you to be.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Discover podcast. We are so glad that you are here with us. We are continuing on in our formation conversation. I am joined by the one and only Jake Milsna and the one and only Montie Klecker. Yay! So hopefully you've been enjoying this conversation. I got a text message from somebody this week thanking us for this podcast, so that was really encouraging.
Hey,
really
gold star soon.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Doug. Shout out to Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
So anyway, we're wrapping up this formation conversation that we've been engaging in around what formation is, and how it works, and how we are inviting people to engage in it. This summer, we're going to be putting out a Bible reading plan around the idea of formation. And so this kind of is priming the pump for what you're going to be doing as you engage in this Bible reading plan that also will have some practices associated with it. So just for recap, without looking at my cheat sheet, can you guys, either one of you, recall the definition of formation that we've been using?
Monty, go.
Oh gosh, you did this to me last time too, and Legos are all that come to mind. Gosh darn. Formation is being formed.
Yeah. You're right.
It's like putting Legos together.
Right. You try, Jake.
The process.
No, you can't.
I may have cheated.
You did, yeah. Now I'm going to say it since both of you didn't get it. The process by which your thinking, feeling, and acting is developed. So what we're saying with this formation conversation is that everybody undergoes formation. Formation is not just a Christian thing. Formation is something that everybody experiences, because everybody's thinking, feeling, and acting in the world is developed in some way. We all have some perception of the world around us that often is shaped by two things. Again, without looking at the sheet, there's two key elements to formation that we've been talking about. I don't know if you guys can't answer these, I don't know what that says about the quality of our podcast. And I think you just looked at the sheet.
I think it only says that we're thinking about what we're going to say.
Yeah. No, I mean, so
that is community is one of them, right? The people around you.
Yeah,
but it wasn't, because that's what I said last week.
it's not.
Environment.
Yeah,
There we go. Which
includes
community
people.
counted, but it was like, because I said community and environment, I think.
And then habits, practices.
Yeah.
Nice.
Environment, your environment and your practices. So, and what we are saying, what we are suggesting is that if you want to undergo Christian formation, you have to put yourself in an environment which does include community, which does include people who are going to help you along that process as you engage in these practices. So we would say that engaging in what we do at Meadowbrook Church, both with Sunday morning, not limited to Sunday morning, but through Sunday morning with the neighborhood community, other people who are also orbiting in and out of this place, that environment will shape something in you. But just showing up, if you just show up to church on Sunday and passively listen and passively receive, and then go out into the world and don't practice anything any other time of the week, what happens when we're gathered together isn't going to have a whole lot of effect.
Yeah.
I should have thought of that ahead of time. What would be an example or an analogy of somebody like going to something thinking it will do something for them, but then they don't put in the work outside that?
I mean, a cooking class. You go learn how to cook to make like healthy meals, and then you can never do it.
Right. So
Like
not practicing.
you've learned all the tips you need,
Yeah.
but you actually have to adjust your life to make it work. You have to shop at the right places to make it work. I think those are similar things. I always do a sports analogy, so I was pretty proud of myself. I'm proud of it. Just was food.
Food and sports are like his two love languages, I think.
Honestly, it's like pretty true.
I think those are the main two love languages, aren't they?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Okay. So we been talking about three different categories. Well, actually 4 different categories of practices. Prayer. We talked about practices of what we call relinquishing.
Yep.
So letting go of something, which we kind of categorize that with silence and solitude, fasting, and Sabbath.
Yeah.
Right. Those are the relinquishing I'm doing my homework.
His memory is better than ours.
Yeah.
And then this last one is the go category.
Yes.
So prayer, scripture reading, relinquishing, and now go or going, which is a very biblical idea, right? This idea of go. Jesus tells the disciples, you are going to go into the world. It's this idea of you are being sent, which we don't often think of the idea of being sent as a formational practice. So just talk high level why we would put that in a category of formation.
I mean, I think it's from the beginning who we were created to be.
Mhm.
We were created to be people who were doing and going. And I think in the creation mandate and in other things, you see that never stops.
Yeah.
It has never stopped been a call on disciples of Jesus. And we want to anchor that in the idea of it's through our formation
Right.
that we do these things. And it's part of our formation that we do these things. As we do them, they help us grow.
Mhm.
They're not just something you do, it's something that helps change you and help you grow. And I think that goes into that definition of what this whole thing of formation is about. It's that your actions, how you think, change. The more you serve people, it changes your heart.
Absolutely.
The more you share the message of Jesus with people, it actually changes you sometimes as much as it changes them.
Yeah.
So I think that is a good picture of formation.
Talking through the service week this morning.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we were talking about is like the first step to serving is noticing. Like if you don't notice what's happening, then there's very little you can do to change what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like noticing is a spiritual practice. Like that's exactly what's happening in Exodus 3 with the burning bush. He pauses and notices.
Yeah.
And so it's like that's a formation to notice.
Yeah. I can remember being in seminary and taking classes around mission and talking about church planting. And I remember thinking, why do we need a church plant? We have churches everywhere. Do we really need more churches, right? That was kind of the prevailing idea in my head. And it was through engaging in those classes, but then actually being a part of different churches while in seminary. One in particular, that was a newer church that was trying to become a multi-campus church. So we're starting another church. They were trying to be a multi-ethnic church. And through that process and just other reading and listening and engagement on the idea of church planting, I began to see like, oh yeah, that really is an important aspect of what we do. And so my thinking was shaped and reformed really into seeing that as a really positive, needed thing. I would also say anybody who's gone on a mission trip has probably experienced some sort of shift in their thinking and their understanding about their faith because of their experience. So these things do shape and form us when we think of the idea of going, being sent. Jesus says that to the disciples, just as the Father sent me, so I'm sending you. He says that at the end of John's gospel, at the beginning of Acts. He says, you will be my witnesses. I'm sending you into the world. In Matthew's gospel, he's saying, go into all the nations. So it's very much a mandate of our faith is to go out into the world. And so within this category of going, there's three main practices that we're going to touch on today. What are those three main practices?
So serving or acts of mercy or care. Then there would be inviting. So this is like, we kind of broke evangelism up into two steps. One is just that initial invite. How do you invite people to come to meet Jesus in different ways? How do you engage them, invite them into your story, into their story? They would be sharing, like actually communicating the message of who Jesus is and how he's at work in your life and in the lives of other people.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So why are these three practices important? I mean, we kind of touched on it just a little bit to say that when it comes to having a new understanding or a new way of thinking about these areas, but why else are they important?
Yeah, they take the heart and put it into action and then say, oh, and what has changed in me, I want to see change in you. If we really do believe that Jesus is the life change that we say he is, then why wouldn't we want others to be able to experience that?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what this is, being the action and also sharing what can change it within you.
Yeah, I think of like the two greatest commandments of Jesus, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. You can feel like you could do that first one with just the first three sets of practices we talked about. But to love your neighbor as yourself, you're going to have to do, like, you're going to have to go out and do something.
Right.
Like you can't just like, oh, I love you. In theory, out there,
Right.
like you get your hands dirty. You invest into people's lives, and that does something to you and changes you. And so I think like the act of serving somebody, coming alongside them and showing care and value, yet inviting them into your life though. So they're not just someone you go and serve, but then you invite them in.
Yeah.
And then lastly, you share about what as believers should be the most important thing to us as who Jesus is and how he's been at work in our lives. It should be the thing we want. I get it. We don't. There's reasons why we don't. We can talk about that in a little bit, but hopefully he is of greatest importance to us and we would want to talk to him. So I think it's just the natural outflow.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was in college, one of the schools I went to had this pond at the center of campus, and it had this pond. It was a pond that had a stream that ran into it, but there was nothing that ran out of it. And so it was this pond. I mean, maybe there was some like little drainage aspect to the pond somewhere along the way, but it didn't have much of an outlet at all. And so over the time, like in the spring into the summer, it would just be really gross and stagnant because all this water and stuff is flowing in, but nothing is flowing out. And I think that's a real great picture of what happens with us. If all we're doing is consuming and all we're doing is taking in, then we grow stagnant, we grow just kind of ineffective, and there's nothing refreshing about us. And we are supposed to be people. I mean, Jesus says, it's one of the metaphors he uses, that springs of living water will flow from you, right? When you engage with what he's calling us to, because that's true of him, like streams of living water or something that he's offering to people. And so we have the ability to be that for others, but it requires that we have something flow into us, the gospel, the spirit, the person of Christ, but also flow out of us into the world. So let's talk about these practices: serving, inviting, and sharing. So let's talk through, how do these practices actually shape you? You can take one of them. You can talk about all of them in general. How do these practices shape you? You can be as detailed as you want.
You want to go first?
Yeah. I mean, I think for serving, you go into that idea. I mean, it's modeled so well by Jesus as someone who serves. The washing of his disciples' feet, the way he cared and healed and did all of those are acts of service. Like the amount of acts of service Jesus did, like if you started writing through the Gospels, it's way higher than you'd think.
Right.
I think you think he's always preaching, but he's actually serving all the time. I've heard people say like Jesus was about showing and telling. He was about showing the kingdom of God and then telling people about the kingdom. And serving is that show. And I think as you do that, first you're just entering into what Jesus did, which that is going to form us. But it also just changes how you view people. I think the more you get in proximity to other people, the more you hear their stories, the more you see their need, something happens in your heart where it just starts to, if there's calluses there, they start to break, your heart starts to soften towards, even sometimes towards people, you soften towards. I just think of ways that I was blessed to be able to do like different service projects over spring break as a college student or other things that changed how I viewed people in the world. Like I was from small town Wisconsin going to inner city Chicago or inner city Minneapolis. And I had these stereotypes. And then I went in, they were shattered, but also my heart was just for people. And so I just think of how much of those things formed me just being there to serve.
I think sometimes when you view somebody in a certain situation and you see them at a distance, you create a narrative in your head about who they are, about why they are, where they are, what's happening in their life. And then when you get closer to them in proximity and you actually spend some time with them, you learn their story and you're like, oh, wow, you're actually not who I thought you were. And there's all sorts of things that I'm learning about you and about myself in the process. Just that interaction alone helps reform and reframe who we are in light of like what's happening in our community. But it requires we have some sort of engagement and proximity with them. Anything you'd add, Monty?
Yeah, it's kind of become like a cliche thing to say, but people won't care to know until they know you care. And like I think that's where service comes in. Like it doesn't have to be these huge projects. It can be, but like just noticing that someone could really use a smile or a hey, are you actually doing okay? Can be huge. And then like after that, of course they want to know why you're curious about them, why you care about them.
And I think it too, again, it's not just like the act in and of itself, but it's the connection to the people that you're serving.
Absolutely.
That often will shape you.
There are some good service opportunities where you actually never interact with the people you serve. Like I think of food packing. Those are still really good. The beauty is when you're able to do both. And like, so definitely do the food packing type events or those other things where you serve maybe from a distance. Then I would say there's even another level of serving in proximity to people. And I think there's just something that God does in your heart.
Yes. So let's talk about the idea of like sharing. Like how does sharing shape you? There's one thing to say, I'm going to go serve and I'm going to like get to know somebody and I'm going to be around them and I'm going to hear their story. But what about actually sharing the gospel, your faith, the good news? How does that shape you?
I think with my story, like, so I came to know the Lord as a college student in an evangelistic campus ministry. So I was sharing the gospel like within a few months, I think, of really coming to know the Lord. And I am actually really grateful for that because I think I learned dependence on the Lord in a way that could have taken a lot longer. But I'm out on the beach talking to these guys about Jesus who I don't even know. And I'm thinking, I barely know enough to have this conversation. And the times where I saw the Lord like speak through me or use like just kind of rehashing what the good news of Jesus is, like without much more than that, and seeing it transform other people's lives, seeing him work in mine. I grew so much just through doing that. In my dependence on him, in my love for the gospel, to be honest, how big it is and how much Jesus can change lives. The more you see him do that, the more you come to expect it. I think that's a good thing. I think it's good for our hearts to be in this place that I actually expect that Jesus will change people's lives. That's a good place to be.
I like that you called out dependence, right? It teaches you dependence on God, especially if it's something that you're not comfortable with or you've never done before. You're taking a step of faith, and it reminds me of the story of Peter stepping out of the boat. Right? Stepping into the unknown, Jesus is saying, come. I mean, granted, Peter also says, hey, invite me out. But Jesus says, come. But in that process, there's this experience of like, I have no idea how this is going to go. But I'm taking a step of faith. And as you take that step of faith and you realize like, oh, I can stand on this, what should be, shaky, uncertain ground, but yet it's solid and firm because of Jesus. It just reinforces that Jesus is with you in those moments and that he will be able to sustain you as you take a step of faith. So
Totally.
What about with the idea of inviting? Like, what does that like shape in you?
Oh, man, like, I mean, it keeps you thinking, what am I inviting people into? Like, if you're not willing to invite people in, what is it about it that you're not willing to invite them into? And so, that's where my brain went. I'll let you continue.
Well, I think going off of what you just said, like if we're not willing to invite, there might be two things. One, we don't have space because we don't think they would like it. Hopefully that's not it. I think we often don't invite because we have a space for us that we like. Like we want that to be our own space. Like we have built up a faith that is very private in our culture. Invitation explodes that. Like it's no longer private. I'm bringing you in, whether it's my church, that's kind of I have my church friends and then I have my other friends. That's gone. Like I'm inviting you into my, not private anymore. I'm letting you know this is a part of my life. Like even inviting someone I remember again, as a college student, inviting someone to the campus ministry I was a part of felt like a big deal. I think you think I'm cool. And if I asked you to come to this, like, but I'm bringing you into that world. There's something really beautiful about that.
So again, it goes back to this idea of making an assumption about somebody. Like you're assuming they're not going to want to be a part of this. They're not going to want what we're doing. When I think many people, we said this in church before, like many people are just waiting to be asked. They have this perception that they actually aren't allowed. Like we have this assumption like anybody can walk through the doors of our church at any time, but people on the outside just think like, I don't think I'm allowed there. I don't think it's okay for me just to walk in, and they're just waiting to be asked. I found that a couple of times myself in the last year, just saying, hey, would you want to come here? Like, I would really like that.
And it works with the phrase we've been using for over the last year with storytellers, that God is always at work. Because the other assumption that they might not want to come is that you would never state it, but God's not going to be working there. what if the assumption's flipped and God working everywhere?
Right.
Well, then I should want to cast the net wide.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And think like, hey, you actually might want this. I think of me. It's like, I was not the person who looked like they really wanted someone to come and talk to them about Jesus with what was going on in my life when I was 20 years old. But someone cast the net.
Yeah.
And so I think like, and I guess for her, it was the assumption that God was working.
Yeah.
Like, and so that in the formation idea of these three, even just talking this out, I think one of the beautiful things is that it's this idea that it presses forward. It's that God's always working.
Yeah.
And I just get to be.
Right. Or so again, that's another way that these practices form you, is they form you in a way of being able to see and identify that God is at work, and you have an experience with that. You don't then have to wonder, or you're like, oh, is he? You're like, oh, I've seen it repeatedly. So then you have a different assumption going on, rather than the assumption of like, this person isn't going to want to be here. The assumption is God's at work in their life. So how do I figure out what that is? The other thing I think that's unique about where we live in the Milwaukee area in the Midwest is that it's a very Catholic and Lutheran area. So lots of people have exposure and experience with church. So it's not as unusual for them to think about going to church. Where I grew up in New England, not so much. Probably in the Northwest as well, not so much. But here, for those of you who are living in the Milwaukee area, who are tuning in, which is probably most of you, people have probably had some, maybe not some great experiences. Yeah. And so it'd be great to hear about those, but then say, well, come check out my church. And you could even just throw out, what I'd love to know. I would love to know how your church experience compares or is similar or is different than our church experience. And the only way that they're going to be able to answer that question is by coming and experiencing what we're doing. And it's a real easy way to engage people in that conversation. And again, you will learn a lot, and a lot will be formed in you as you take part of that. Anything else that you guys would say as to how these practices of serving, inviting, and sharing, how they shape you or what they shape in you?
Yeah, you go first.
I mean, something that had come to my mind was actually like times that I haven't. And like, there's one specific instance that is ingrained in my head. I was a senior in my undergrad at a Bible school, and I went across the street to a gas station to pick up a protein bar. And like, my brain was not people focused. I was just getting through. And I have a suicide awareness tattoo. It's a broken noose and says, hold on with the semicolon, it's not over. The hope was covered. So the hold on and the broken noose part was covered. And the guy that was checking me out, he was like, oh, I love your tattoo. And he started showing off his pentagram tattoos and all these other things. But it would have been a really easy conversation to start. And I did not see him as someone to have that conversation with in that moment. And then he delivered the gut punch line of, it's really funny that me of all people is working across the street from this Christian college, because none of them ever want to seem to do anything or have anything to do with it. It was like, oh gosh. And I still didn't do anything because that just was not where I was at. And like, I have a lot of regrets around that. And so I think that formed something within me of like, I want to see people as the image of God, and I want to love them in the way that I didn't him.
Yeah, it's interesting because that highlights and illustrates the fact that as you don't engage in these practices, something is formed in you as well. So maybe there's a guilt or regret in that. And I think God can redeem all of that.
Absolutely.
But as you continue to either engage or even not engage, like, something is formed in you. And it could be simple as like this assumption. If I'm assuming somebody doesn't want what we have or isn't interested, and I keep avoiding that, that's just going to create a further assumption formed in me. Like, that's just, they don't want that. Rather than saying, well, what if I were to try to engage and see how that challenges that assumption? So let's talk about how, like, what makes these three things, reaching out or serving, inviting, and sharing, what makes them challenging? What are challenges around them that sometimes cause us to avoid them? Let's start with just the serving idea. Let's say somebody attends church. They've been attending Meadowbrook for about a year, and they have yet to take the step of engaging, whether it's serving as a greeter or in the kids area or in the cafe or in any capacity. What about that could be like intimidating, or what about it seems hard for somebody to engage in that?
I feel like I hear the most of, oh, I don't think that I know enough. to be helpful there, or like that I'll connect with them well, or anything like that.
Yeah,
Most
that's interesting.
Our context.
Yeah, I think that busyness.
Yeah.
Sunday morning might be a little easier for some. Like, I'm already going to be there. But sometimes at our church, it means you're going to 2 services.
Right.
That feels like a lot.
Yeah.
So that it disrupts your schedule, whether you're serving at church or you're going somewhere else. A lot of us are running to multiple different things.
Right.
You actually have to plan ahead
Yeah.
to be able to do it.
Yeah.
That's of the plan. But there's also spontaneous service, like of seeing a need and just meeting it.
Yeah.
And I think the reason we don't do that is we just don't look up a lot of the time. We're just so focused on what we need to do.
Yeah.
That's sometimes why it's great having kids, because they see needs. I remember driving once and there's a homeless person on the side of the road. My son at the time, I don't remember how old he was. He was like 7. And he just said, "What's going on over there?" And I'm like, "I haven't even thought about that."
Yeah.
So I have to explain to him. He's like, "Why don't we invite them to live at our house?" And there are plenty of reasons why that answer was no to that, but it was really good because I was like, I haven't even thought of how I can help these people. So maybe it's not inviting them into my house, but what could we do?
Yeah.
And so even like just thinking through, like, how do we lift our eyes up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's a challenge for like inviting and sharing is a fear of rejection.
Yeah.
The fear. I think that's probably the number one fear that prohibits somebody from engaging in those 2 practices, because I'll be rejected.
Yeah.
And I get that's a legitimate fear. Like I get that fear, and I want to say I validate that fear, and I've had that fear. But I also find that when you really know somebody, like when you're in a genuine relationship with somebody and they care about you, there's a curiosity that they have as well, and an openness that they have, because they want to know more about you. And if you can approach those conversations in a non-pushy way, in an open-handed way, like people are really more receptive than I think we tend to expect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with inviting and sharing, it's fear of rejection, fear of not knowing the answers, like this, almost like I'm going to screw it up, almost what you said with serving, but even especially in sharing or inviting, like, do I know enough?
Yeah.
And I just think you do, you know what God's done in your life.
Yeah.
You're not going to you're not going to answer every question they have. That's okay. I don't know, it's a good phrase to use. So I think those are like 2 very key. And then I think the third one that's the hardest to admit, those first 2 might be easy to admit. The third one is, do we really believe it's good news for everybody? Because I'm not going to invite and share with people if I don't actually believe the good news is good news for everyone. And that's, I think, the thing that I need to wrestle with as we have a church in a more affluent area of what do they need here?
Right.
What good news do I have to offer? And one of the healthiest things for me sometimes is to sit back and think, why is the good news for this people?
Right.
Yeah.
And the more I do that, the more the list gets longer and longer. And now this really is beautiful news.
It's a good word.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and start to wind down and say, if somebody is listening to this podcast and they're like, okay, I'm recognizing that I should engage in these 3 things, but I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure where to begin. How would you encourage them to engage? And let's just take one by one, give an answer or 2 for each one of these. So if somebody is thinking like, yeah, serving would be good for me, how can I engage in that? Where would they start?
I mean, just serving here, we have the welcome team. We've got how many ministries that we're always like wanting more people to be a part.
Kids ministry, welcome ministry, there's creators.
Yeah. And then we live in a city that like there is so much brokenness in our backyard. We're working on getting the Elevate students connected to several of the ministries. And a conversation I've been having with those ministries is like, this is right here, this level of brokenness. And we like to think, oh, that's in Chicago or whatever. And it's like, well, no, it's right here, maybe Chicago. They don't say that. That was mean. And then, like, if you really do feel this call to even more service, like, it's not something that has to be your vocation, but it's something that you can be consistently working with. We've got a group of guys here who, like, they're always working on something in the building. And then they're always working on something at Hope Street or somewhere else. And it's like, those hearts of service are something that you build. Yeah, we've got some guys right now in the worship center working on something. Just this week, Hope Street posted about one of the volunteers that they were celebrating who happens to go to our church. So we had ministry partners, CareNet, Hope Street, Inner Beauty, Safe Families. We have lots of ways that people can engage in serving. And so if you're like, yeah, maybe I should explore that, we'd love to have a conversation with you. And again, it's not like, hey, we want you to do stuff for us. We want to find an avenue where we,
we want to come alongside you however we can.
Yeah.
And I would love to see that happen even organically through our church.
Yeah.
So what about for inviting? How would you encourage somebody? All right, so again, serving might feel easier. Inviting might feel a little bit more intimidating.
I mean, invitation is all about the relationship.
Yeah.
And
it's true.
so it's not necessarily even inviting them to church, but inviting them
Yeah.
saying, hey,
Yeah.
you're someone I want to get to know better. Let's talk.
Right.
And that can often be what breeds the, hey, do you want to be a part of my life in this way? And church is a part of our life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. I think inviting somebody to share their story, right? We talked a lot about this with our Storytellers Initiative, is that when it comes to sharing your story, the place to begin is actually listening to somebody else's story first. And so inviting somebody to coffee and just say, hey, I'd love to sit down and get to know you better. Can we do that? I think you'll find people would be honored because they feel seen, they feel known in that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say one of the things you can do is just do it right away. I think we wait.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got to build up this. I got to build up this relationship. You can invite someone the first time you're talking with them to share more of their story. Yeah. To ask if you can share part of your story, to invite them to something that's not. We make it so weird, but it's really not. Like, it gets weirder the longer you wait. It's like the girl you want to like ask out. The longer you wait to ask her out, the harder it gets over time. Mm-hmm. And it's actually not that different. You get into this zone where, like, why haven't you brought this up to me before? I think we can do it a lot earlier than we think we can to invite someone.
There's a guy who goes to our church, and granted, this is a context of somebody who's already out of church. So I'm not inviting them to church, but there's this guy who goes to our church. We see each other at the grocery store almost every week. Our grocery store rhythm is we go to Aldi, get things at Aldi, and then we go to Meijer and get things at Meijer. When I said we, it's me who's doing it. That's just one of my jobs. But I see this same guy at Aldi almost every week. And our joke is we say hi to each other, and we maybe like say a quick hello, and like sometimes I'll try and like steal his cart and walk away with it or whatever. And the other day I was like, why have we not like actually, I mean, it's been a year of this, maybe even more than that. I'm like, why have we not sat down and actually just had coffee and actually get to know one another? There's a friendly acquaintance there, but I don't know him. Like, that needs to change. And so we've started that process of setting that up. And to your point, it just took way too long to just say, I should get to know you. What is the step you can take towards practicing sharing what you believe with somebody else?
You got to think through what you're going to say. Yeah. I think that's one of the problems. We want everything to feel really authentic and from the heart. That's great, but you should have an idea of what you're going to, like, you don't get up there on a Sunday morning to give a sermon. Like, I haven't thought about this all
right. Shooting from the hip.
But we treat like sharing the good news like that.
Yeah.
Like, we're like, well, and they ask, I will have the words to say. Well, maybe just think through. Yeah. Like, what are some of the key things, the ways that the gospel brings hope to people? Yeah. The way that, what did Jesus really accomplish on the cross for people? Like, be thinking through, how am I going to share? I think it just helps you feel more prepared.
Yeah. Anything you did?
Like, my brain always goes to community. The youth group will tell you that's my favorite word. Yeah. And like, if you're building a community with someone, a relationship with someone, then you will be sharing what's changing in your life. Yep. And like, I think that's one of the most powerful things that you can do. Or even inviting people into your brokenness. The beginning of this year was a tough one, and one of my close friends from a coffee shop stepped into my life and like immediately became a part of sharing that with me, even where he was in his own faith. Like, it's been a very cool thing.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is think about sharing your own story. We talked a lot about that with Storytellers Initiative, and you can even go back and listen to some podcasts in this season where we talked about the idea of like how you share your story and how you share your testimony and how you share the gospel. And so again, by thinking about your own experience with Jesus, makes it less intimidating of like, I have to be a preacher or share some profound thing. It's like, no, I just need to share what Jesus has done for me, how my faith helps me. I told a story in a sermon a long time ago where I was out and there was a mutual friend. Well, it was actually one of his friends, and I got to know them in that conversation. And somewhere along the way, this guy asked my friend the question, what does your faith do for you? And I was like, that's a really good way to think about that question. What does your faith do for you? And to have thought about that question, to say, here's what it does for me. And it just gives you one prepared answer for like why your faith is important to you. Not that you're trying to push it on people. Like, it should do this for you, but it's like, hey, this is what it's done for me. This is how it's affected me. Not just in so much of like, Jesus saved me from my sins, although he does that, but on a daily basis. And I think that's what that guy really wanted to know. Like, how does it help you day to day? Because I think people without faith, well, I actually think everybody has faith in something, but people who don't share the faith that we have, like, and I think that's what they want to know. Like, not just this trope of like, Jesus died for my sins so I can get to heaven when I die, but what is it doing for you right now? And if you can answer that question, it puts you in a place where just all you're doing is sharing your own experience. So hopefully these conversations around formation have been helpful for you. Again, look for the reading plan this summer. It will come out when?
June 7th.
June 7th.
Be available at church on May 31st.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in about a month or a few weeks out from whenever this is posted. And we really hope that it's a great experience for you this summer to experience the summer of formation as you start our new Bible reading plan. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you